Okay. I think we're good to start, and I'll call to order this joint meeting of the Mount Pleasant City Commission and the Mount Pleasant Planning Commission this Thursday, March 4th, 2021. And if you'd like, we have to do those separately from what I remember from the last time we met. So.
Do you want me to go first with the city commission roll call?
Go for it.
Okay. Because I don't know where all the tiles are, I'm going to call even though I don't see a person's name, just to make sure that I'm getting this correct. Commissioner Alsager. And remember that with the virtual meeting, you need to state where you're viewing this meeting from. Commissioner Simon? Yep. Olivia?
Yep, I am in the city of Mount Pleasant, state of Michigan, Isabella County.
Commissioner Gillis? Commissioner Ronan? Commissioner Tolis?
City of Mount Pleasant, Isabella County, State of Michigan.
Vice Mayor Pierschbacher?
The city of Mount Pleasant, Isabella County, in the state of Michigan.
And Mayor Joseph?
I'm in the city of Mount Pleasant, the county of Isabella, in the state of Michigan.
Okay, we have 4 commissioners present for a quorum.
Commissioner Daly,
Here. Sorry.
in your city, state, and county.
Oh, sorry. Just got fumbled in here. Mount Pleasant, Isabella, Michigan.
Commissioner Friedrich,
Here, Mount Pleasant, Isabella County, Michigan.
Commissioner Honig,
I'm here in the city of Mount Pleasant, county of Isabella, state of Michigan.
Commissioner Irwin,
I'm here, City of Mount Pleasant, County of Isabella, State of Michigan.
Commissioner Kingsworthy,
Hello, I'm here. I'm in the city of Mount Pleasant, the county of Isabella, and the state of Michigan.
Commissioner Kostreva,
Here, Mount Pleasant, Isabella, State of Michigan.
Commissioner Leash,
Here, Mount Pleasant, Isabella, Michigan.
Commissioner Ortman,
Here in Mount Pleasant, Michigan, Isabella County, State of Michigan.
Commissioner Rise.
I am here. I'm in the city of Mount Pleasant, the county of Isabella, and the state of Michigan.
Madam Chair, you have quorum.
Marianne, real quickly, I should have mentioned Commissioner Gillis did contact us earlier and indicate she would either be late or not be able to attend tonight. If you can make sure we have proper note of that, please.
Got that, thank you.
Okay. Do we have any additions or deletions to the agenda tonight? And I know, I guess I would ask. You guys use the raise hand feature like we do? I'm not sure.
No, not really.
We haven't, no.
Okay.
Some people have physically raised their hands, but otherwise, no, we haven't used the raise hand feature.
We could try it.
Right. Well, I don't see any hand up for additions or deletions to the agenda, so I think we can move on to staff recommendations and reports. Tonight, obviously, we we have a review of the Planning Commission's 2020 annual report and to discuss 2021 priorities. And so I will kind of hand it over to Nancy and Jacob for those reports.
Thank you, Mayor. The annual report is something the Planning Commission provides to the City Commission every year under state law. And last year, you'll recall, you received it in one of your packets, but we weren't able to schedule a joint meeting. We kept hoping that we would be able to go back to live meetings before we had the joint meeting. And unfortunately, that never happened last year. So this year, instead of waiting for that to happen, we decided to go forward with the virtual meeting. So with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Kane or Ms. Honig if they would like to walk through the annual report.
Thank you, Nancy. And Chair Honig, I'll go ahead and give a brief presentation of the annual report if you're okay with that. Per usual policy.
Absolutely.
So first of all, I just want to thank the City Commission for meeting with the Planning Commission on our regular meeting night. I think This is the first time in several years that we've done that, and this is definitely the best attendance we've had from the Planning Commission over the years at this joint meeting, which is wonderful to see. Looking at our 2020 annual report, obviously, like the rest of the world and many things, COVID-19 and the pandemic changed the outlook of the year pretty dramatically from what we anticipated at the start of the year to now. One of the things that was most impacted by COVID-19 was our master plan effort. As you all know, in 2019, the city held our primary public engagement sessions and released our draft plan to the community. And the hope and intent was that at some time in early 2020, we would have some in-person public engagement activities. Those were planned for March and April, which obviously, as a result of the pandemic, those events were not able to be held in person. And so we refocused and were able to do virtual events instead in August, when it became clear that in-person events were unlikely to be in the cards for the year 2020. Ultimately, as a result, following those events, we were able to commence with the public hearing process. Because that plan is a joint plan with the Parks and Recreation Commission, there were 3 public hearings held, one with the Parks and Rec Commission in September, one before the Planning Commission in October, and then ultimately in November before the City Commission for adoption. And so this is the first master plan adopted since the end of 2014. And so as we move into the work plan discussion tonight, implementation of this new plan, utilizing some of the framework provided in book 5, will obviously be a major component of the work plan, not just for 2021, but for future years. The other thing I'll highlight in this year's annual report is that one of the things, major changes that came to the community was adult use marijuana, the implementation of the ordinances that were adopted by the city. With the completion of the application period and selection process for adult use retailers, the Planning Commission did review and approve 3 special use permits and site plans related to those approved retailers. Planning Commission also reviewed and approved a special use permit for 1 medical marijuana Class C grower and 1 adult use Class C grower in 2020. And those applications have continued as we move into 2021, and including 1 medical Class A grower application that'll be on our regular agenda tonight. You'll also know we had a few projects come forward that were related to green infrastructure, and that's something the Planning Commission has indicated some interest in discussing as part of their work plan for 2021 is the city's policies and approach related to green infrastructure, including things like solar arrays and vehicle charging stations. That's really the kind of the high level overview of what we saw in 2020. I'd welcome any questions anybody has on that report before we move on to our second item.
I guess one thing I would mention, Jacob, to add to it is one of the text changes that the Planning Commission recommended and the City Commission approved were changes to the residential building requirements. And I was just going to mention tonight to make sure that particularly the City Commission was aware that we have issued already this year 2 residential building permits for single family homes. And when I drove by this morning, they were already digging holes in the ground to start constructing those homes on Batson Court. So I think those adjustments were well appreciated by members of the Home Builders Association, and we're seeing immediate effects of that.
Any questions for Mr. Kane or the city or the Planning Commission? Commissioner Tullis, I see your hand.
Yeah, thank you. Jane, what grower's license, what would be the address of that one that you're reviewing for tonight on the Planning Commission, please?
The application on tonight's agenda is at 1110 North Fancher. It's the southeast corner of Fancher and Sampson Streets. I'm sorry, the southeast corner, not the northeast corner.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. I don't see any hands up, so I think Jacob, if you'd like to talk about 2021 goals.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll let the chairperson jump in at any point at her discretion if she'd like to elaborate. So I'll just very briefly state that the Planning Commission thus far has had 2 work sessions where the 2021 work plan was discussed, one in December and one in February. And based on the substance of last month's work session, a number of items were identified as components of the 2021 work plan, including reviewing some topics for possible housekeeping amendments to the zoning ordinance. We are carrying over from 2020 update of the Planning Commission bylaws and rules of procedure. The bylaws document actually dates back to 1989. And since that time, the states actually adopted new planning and zoning laws. And so we're looking at potentially a clean sheet update of those bylaws to bring them into better conformance, both with current practice as well as the state laws that govern the Planning Commission's activities. As I mentioned during the review of the annual report, with the adoption of the master plan at the end of last year, implementation activities related to Book 5 of the master plan will certainly be identified during this year and subsequent years. And those that are relevant to the Planning Commission will be brought forward for consideration. And then in the memo tonight, I've provided an overview of the items that the Planning Commission identified in work session last month as being desired for further conversation during the calendar year. And so we'll be looking at scheduling these out for work session conversations over the coming months in order to get feedback from the Planning Commission and ultimately determine where there's interest in text amendments, what that might look like, and then begin bringing those forward for official consideration. Madam Chair, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that.
I do not.
Okay. Okay. Well, first, I would like to extend a debt of gratitude, obviously, to the Planning Commission over the last year, and this kind of echoes some of the comments from Mr. Kane. Last year was pretty rough with everything, with the pandemic and with the big work with the master plan and everything else that you guys achieved, and being flexible, meeting virtually. I think that was, that was a big ask from the community and obviously from us. So I'm really appreciative of your efforts and willingness to serve. And I was a little bit just wondering if you guys could talk a little bit more about the green infrastructure, the rain gardens, the native plantings, and the other things that you're looking forward to talking about this year.
I can provide a brief overview, Mr. Mayor. That conversation stemmed out of a discussion on an application that was before the Planning Commission recently, and sort of backfills on some previous conversations that we've had on particularly the solar energy and electric car charging, as those items have come forward to the Planning Commission for review and approval. The zoning ordinance is currently fairly silent on those matters, just in the sense that generally these type of things are allowed or encouraged indirectly, but it's not stated clearly, and there's no incentive structure provided necessarily for providing these items of green infrastructure in lieu of other forms of approaches to address, like for instance, a rain garden can help to address runoff. There's not necessarily any sort of incentive structure in our code to say, provide a rain garden instead of a retention pond or some other traditional stormwater approach. And so there was a desire to have a conversation about what the Planning Commission might do through the code to encourage and incentivize folks to provide green infrastructure with their projects, whether that's through reduced regulation where there is regulation imposed or through some other sort of incentive structure. I suspect, although we haven't had the conversation, that that's likely to be sort of an indirect incentive, so not a financial incentive, obviously, but if there's anything that we could do through process or through some code allowances or flexibility to encourage folks to utilize these principles with their projects.
Thank you, Jacob. Looks like I saw, I think Commissioner Irwin's hand up. I don't know if you.
That was a mistake. It should be
Oh,
down
okay.
now.
Yep. I saw it pop up, so I didn't want to leave you hanging.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ronan. No problem.
Commissioner Ronan, you're muted. Commissioner Ronan, we're still not able to hear you. It doesn't appear your audio is working. Would you like to try to sign off and sign back on real quick to see if that works?
It looks like he did. It looks like he's left the meeting.
Maybe you can see if anybody else has any other comments or questions while we're waiting for him to come back in.
Sure. Commissioner Daly.
Yeah, before I pull a George there. We've been talking about a missing middle for quite a long time, so I'm, enthused about looking into what we can do for housing that is for people sort of on the way in their lives. So that's just my 2 cents to say that it would be a good thing for the city to have a greater availability for that level of housing. Young professionals, folks that help a city grow.
Thank you, Commissioner Daly. I hear, I hear those same concerns a lot from people, especially professionals at CMU and related, fields where people are, moving. That's something, I know we addressed that a little bit in our changing like the per acre requirements for some of our housing this past year, but and there's an upcoming amendment to the first floor housing in our downtown and more urban areas. But certainly I think that point is well noted and something we need to address. I had a question about the incentives for non-conforming uses and I know it's an upcoming topic for you guys, but I was wondering what some thoughts were from and what that might look like.
I can just throw out some contextual comments and then let the planning commissioners chime in. That was included on the list to address the fact that, as we, I think, all know, there's a number of properties within the community that are residential in nature but non-conforming, typically rooming type dwellings in more of a residential setting, although that's not exclusively the case. And so this was really to start having a discussion about what tools might be available through the code to result in those properties perhaps not becoming fully conforming, but becoming less non-conforming than they currently are. So perhaps reducing densities within units or converting to a multifamily structure rather than a single large rooming dwelling within a residential setting. This would, I think, dovetail with some of the conversation that's scheduled to occur at the city commission work session next week regarding owner occupied incentives and different tools that exist in the city to help to shift the housing supply in desirable directions.
Thank you, Mr. Kane. I guess for me personally, I guess I'd like to hear from some of the commissioners, even if it's not related directly to some of the 2021 goals, but just thoughts on what you guys are thinking about, this year and in the future as you serve on this board, and things you'd like to see addressed or ideas for the community.
Mr. Mayor, it does look like Commissioner Ronan was able to rejoin us as well.
Yeah. George, if you're able,
can you hear me? I don't know.
You may have the
Yes,
floor.
we can. Yep.
You can hear me? Oh, great. Yeah, I don't know how that worked, actually. Thank you very much. I just wanted to say how appreciative I was. It seemed like there was some brouhaha last year about builders and codes and things like that. And it was great to see that the commission the planning commission got together with the builders and sort of resolved those concerns. I know when I was running for the position of commission, that came up, and it was really good to see how that resolved. It's also great to hear that there's 2 building permits or 2 housing permits that have been filed. One of the things the commission seems to be concerned about is, or what I'm concerned about, so let me do it that way, is economic development in the town. Because we've had so many businesses go out, restaurants, things like that. Is there any way that you see yourselves as having a hand in sort of pushing that agenda forward? Or is there anything you guys think you could do to sort of help with the economic redevelopment after the pandemic ends in July or so?
Well, you have to, from my point of view, George, it's an interesting question. And right now, we all know that CMU, which is a major driver of economic activity in this town, is not nearly what it used to be. To me, the big driver is going to be the recovery of CMU to let me see if I can get rid of that. And then the other thing from my point of view is that the mediocre nature of what was another on the north side of town, the oil and gas business has been absolutely horrible. But historically, I've been here for a long time, that used to provide a tremendous economic resource, a lot of jobs and a lot of free money. And so the recovery of the oil industry and the recovery of CMU would be the first thing that we can hope for. I'm not sure that any of us can affect any of that. I'm hopeful that CMU restores itself with an upswing in the number of students that can come.
Yeah, Michael, that's great. I'm sorry, I went out of turn. Excuse me. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. I'm done.
Can I just follow up with this? Is that okay, Mayor?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't see CMU recovering right away. So I've looked at the numbers out to 2035. And I think if you look at people who are aware of these numbers, I don't see, they're predicting decreases. I think we've got a 7% decrease. I forget the numbers, but I mean, none of them are positive over the next 5 years. So, I mean, if we're waiting for that, right, it's going to be a while.
I really appreciate your sentiments, Commissioner Ronan and Commissioner Kasura. I also wanted to add, I do think we have some opportunities, when we talk about the types of housing, our community with CMU does offer housing and that kind of thing. And so we really do want to provide some flexibility, understanding that landlords are probably not going to be renting as many housing units, maybe they want more quality housing units, but just being able to have that flexibility for our landowners is going to be a really key part of our development. And then the other thing I really wanted to mention is that we have the property over on Pickard Street that is the undeveloped, used to be the state home property. And as a commissioner, a planning commissioner, I'm really looking forward to us having these conversations. I was, hoping that when I joined the planning commission a couple years ago, that we would start working on that and start beginning, what do we envision for this property? How can we see this as being maybe something that helps to build our community, strengthen all of the aspects of our community, our economic development, our residential development, our public enjoyment of the property. So I really hope that all of this commission, specifically the joint commission of the city and the planning commission, that we can address that at some point, maybe not this year, but next year or whenever.
Commissioner Leash.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to the earlier point about CMU's demographic changes as well as the city's changes. And I want to make clear that although I work at CMU, I'm speaking solely as my role, in my opinion, as a planning commissioner. One of the things that, the city can proactively think about is asking the question, how can we make sure that as we reshape, redevelop, recreate places, this concept of placemaking, how can we do placemaking that helps recruit and retain students to CMU? And some of those answers aren't ones that any of us on the commission will necessarily come up with ourselves. It requires listening to people who are considering college at CMU or are currently CMU students. And the more we listen and think about their ideas or goals or priorities, the more successful we'll be at that. And so going forward, whether it's 1 year or 5 years from now, trying to listen to the thoughts and ideas that potential and current students have at CMU, that's going to help out with economic development in Mount Pleasant, help out with the tax base, help out to make a more vibrant community.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Leash and Commissioner Rise, and I think and Commissioner Kostreva. I think one thing that I think I shared a couple of weeks ago with the City Commission, but I think it's relevant here when we talk about placemaking and CMU and sort of what can we do as planning commissioners and city commissioners towards economic development. I meet occasionally with President Davies, and he usually asks, what can I do for you? And I kind of turned it around on him and I said, well, what can the city do for CMU? How can we help? And I think the first thing out of his mouth was make Mount Pleasant cool. And so I know that's kind of a very generic term and what is cool, but I think that sometimes that's, especially when it comes to placemaking and regulating how we're going to develop our city, it's really important to create a place, because I think as in a global, economy, you can work from anywhere, especially in a pandemic where a lot of people are working from home. And so you want to create a place where people want to live. And I think that also attracts, careers and people who might invest in our community in other ways. And so that's where I kind of see an avenue for us to work together in ways that, not all, I don't have all the ideas in front of us, but I think with that mindset of how can we attract young professionals, how can we attract things that are going to make Mount Pleasant a place where people want to, live and work and be entertained. That's sort of the idea. I see Commissioner Toles has his hand up, so.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with Commissioner Ronan and Commissioner Kostreva. CMU definitely got problems when we had enrollment as high as over 18,000, and now we're somewhere around 11,000. Also, Mr. Commissioner Kostreva's comment on the oil business, we have been devastated here. I'm in that business. You know, we had $20 or $30 oil. Now finally it broke 63 or 64 now, but it's going to be a while before it gets generated, and I don't know if it's ever going to get back to what it was. I also agree with Commissioner Rise that on development of the regional center, that we should get back on that and get in some type of conversation with the county on possibly putting, you know, selling them 30 acres in either the northwest or northeast corner and get something going there. That meets public purpose as the deed specs out. And I see this other area was turned down because of lack of water and sewer, and they were paying close to $27,000 an acre for that. Right now, I believe we have about $20,000 an acre into that regional center. And I like to see some dialogue going back and forth with them where we possibly could recoup, you know, $500,000-$600,000 for that 30 acres in either corner. And somehow, when they demo the old jail property there, the city would wind up with that property and could do some type of development on it, you know, apartments or something else in that realm. But I think something should definitely be done here because I think that's a good area to put it.
I don't necessarily agree that's a good place to put a jail. I know there's still a lot of work being done to determine what areas are buildable, if I understand correctly. And we did have an open house to get public input on what to do with the Mount Pleasant Center. No one that I'm aware of proposed moving the jail there. Granted, that probably wasn't a hot topic that year, but it's not exactly news that we need a new jail either.
Well, I believe that the county proposed to come to the city commission, but the city commission voted it down to have them come and do a proposal. And I'll tell you why it's a good place to put it, because you're talking the economics. If you put a jail outside of the city, you're transporting people back and forth from the county jail to the courthouse, back and forth. Why would you take that and move it that distance and cause that much more expense? And later on, they're talking about possibly moving the courthouse too. So why wouldn't you do it there, put it there so you could have it all in one complex next to each other? It just makes sense. But, and another thing, you've got title problems on that parcel. And what that title calls for is public purpose only. Well, this is a public purpose. And we can get some of our $6+ million back on this so we can do something rather than sit on it for another 10 years and do nothing. That's my point on it. We're not doing anything right now, and we can be doing something. And they did look at that because I talked to Sheriff Maine about it. Said, well, that sounds like a good idea. We'll see if we can get some dialogue started. But the dialogue was never started. I mean, it should have been, I think.
So at this point in time, the courthouse is downtown. It would take just as much time to transport prisoners from a jail on the Mount Pleasant Center as from somewhere in Union Township. Also, wasn't the purpose of acquiring that land to increase the tax base? Having county-owned buildings would not increase the tax base there.
But you're still going to get revenue on the water and sewer that's there. So the city's going to be making money off that. Not only that, you're keeping those people in the downtown area that would still come back downtown to eat and do everything else. I mean, it makes sense to me, but I don't know.
Why would that bring people downtown?
Where are the people from the jail and the courthouse going right now? They're eating downtown. They're spending money downtown.
Because they're already there.
Correct. Well, they're already there, but I mean, eventually they're going to all wind up moving somewhere else. If, you know, the expansion is needed. So
I apologize if my comments led to this discussion. This is not where I expected it to go. All I wanted to say is that the commission is interested in economic development. If there's some way we can help the planning commission with that, I think there's enough people on the commission, on the city commission, interested in that. And if you've got ideas, bring them forward. So I apologize if I derailed this conversation into these little pocket type things, but I'm appreciative of everything you do. If you ever call me, I just, you know, development's key. So if there's some way the commission can help, I think, you know, let us know.
On the Mount Pleasant Center property, just to comment for a second, Commissioner Tolis is correct. We acquired it for public purpose. Economic development is a public purpose, and the original goal, as one of the commissioners said, was to grow the tax base and or create jobs. There has been a question that came up about some of the wording in the deed about public use versus public purpose. And we're working with the state department to try to clarify that, to make sure we have, we're on solid ground about what the appropriate use is, so that we don't create problems for a future developer. And it did kind of get sidelined last year during the pandemic, but we just reinitiated those conversations, I think 2 weeks ago, and we're hoping to get that clarified. And once we get that clarified, then we'll be able to start having more discussions about the preferred future use of that land. So I just wanted to make sure the group knew where we were with that at this point in time.
Thank you, Manager Ridley.
Can I?
Go, yeah.
Can I go ahead and say something? Yeah, you have to ask yourself, you know, Mount Pleasant seems to be in a very languid state right now. But somewhere out there, you've got economic development is the issue. And certainly you have to ask yourself what governmental agency or quasi-governmental agency is out there promoting Mount Pleasant as a place where businesses should come, manufacturing facilities or modern technology facilities. You know, we're probably all familiar with Grand Rapids and how that appears to be just an incredible growth and very, very attractive community. Kalamazoo is not far behind, but in each case you've got local, see if you agree with me, you've got local big money that was behind that. The DeVosses basically have, from my point of view, have caused Grand Rapids to be the very attractive community that it is. And then you've got in Kalamazoo, it's the Stryker family, individual families that took it on themselves, and they've got the money to support the community. From my point of view, we've had nothing like that in Mount Pleasant. Matter of fact, from my point of view, the people that are really, you know, wealthy here, while they are very, very kind, they're not involved in something that they're more involved in charitable causes than they are with economic development. Pardon my phone here. I'm the only one here.
Are you going to volunteer money? Is that what I heard?
Well, no, I'm saying that when I compare what Mount Pleasant needs is, George, you have done a wonderful thing. You stepped in and saved downtown. And from my point of view, I'm mostly concerned about old downtown Mount Pleasant, because if Pete's right, and even if this new jail heads out by Morey Courts, or if it heads out even into the old state home area, it's still going to have a deleterious effect on downtown Mount Pleasant, from my point of view. To me, the key to Mount Pleasant being a place, as you say it, is that old downtown Mount Pleasant become attractive. And right now, I'd say it is lacking and needs a sugar daddy, or it needs a state of Michigan to come in. But mostly, from my point of view, I'm not in the public sector. I'm in the private sector. I'd like to see some either manufacturing business or a tech business come in, and if we could attract it here. Mount Pleasant does have many positive things going for it, but who's responsible for going out and reaching out to the to the people, to the technology company that might come here, or the manufacturing company that might relocate here? That I don't know. Jacob, do you know?
I think there's a number of different partners that work on promoting Mount Pleasant as an attractive place to do business. And just offhand, I think the university and CMURC play a role in that. Middle Michigan Development Corporation obviously has a principal role in that. And then through the city's economic development activities, we play a role in promoting the region. And our in-house economic development activities are supplemented by those of other entities within the region. So the Union Charter Township, the City of Clare, City of Alma, City of Midland, bringing folks into the region has a beneficial effect. Just like when you can place a new retailer, they often will, attract additional foot traffic and bring some kind of retailers along with them, or restaurants or other uses. So there's a lot of folks involved in that. Unfortunately, the reality is business attraction sounds good in theory, but in practice, it's very difficult to attract a business that doesn't have a prior connection with your community. So our best hope is to leverage things like CMURC to find folks who have, maybe they grew up in Mount Pleasant, maybe they went to Central Michigan University, maybe there's something else specific to our community that really attracts them here. And then through quality of life, sell them on having their business here.
Commissioner Tullis, go ahead.
I have to agree with Commissioner Kostreva on that, but I think we have to get a few different entities that are aggressive. For instance, I brought this point up before. We lost a cheese factory to St. John's, Michigan, that was going to come here, which was a $150 million deal that employed 200 people. And we lost that because the people that we hired to sub out were not aggressive. I mean, they came here, but by the time they did anything, it was just too late, to do anything. And now this cheese plant's gone there. Now there's another $60 million project going next to the cheese plant, which is an eel raising factory that uses byproducts from that. So I mean, you're employing, 250, 300 people, and look at the tax base it brought in. But you have to get aggressive. Clare, Midland, St. John's, all these places are looking to bring business in, but you need full-time people on it, to get aggressive and get these businesses in here to generate this. Everybody's fighting for businesses. So I think something's got to be changed there.
Commissioner Leach.
Unmuted. All right. Now that I'm unmuted, I've heard a wide variety of I think, very useful comments, and it seems to be in kind of multiple conversations, the economic development of trying to lure big businesses, as well as kind of the economic gardening, or kind of smaller amounts of placemaking that can go to incubate new businesses, startups, and retain students who are here. I mean, one of the CMU's competitive advantages compared to some of the smaller communities around here, such as Clare or in Mount Pleasant, is having this built-in university community. One of the things that I wonder, and it's trying to be constructive here, is I've enjoyed reading the monthly magazines from the Michigan Association of Planning, and just thinking about the most recent one, the January-February issue, is a combined joint monthly issue, looking at how to redesign and replan events in cities to become winter cities. We have a lot of great events in Mount Pleasant in the summer. Putting in some winter events isn't going to automatically lure a whole bunch of big businesses here, but the examples they were giving in this magazine, I think, would be useful. All those planning commissioners get this in the mail. I also wondered if it'd be good if somehow, like, city commissioners could see that, and we can bounce around some ideas, say at next year's meeting, or just even separately, ideas to help give Mount Pleasant that cool factor that Mayor Joseph had referenced earlier in his regarding conversation with President Davies. Just like, how do we help retain the students that we have? How do we help retain people who are here? It doesn't solve all the problems, but that's a low-cost step towards helping things out is broader dissemination of ideas. When we look at like a state level planning association, they deal with a broader array of things, including economic development things, than a typical planning commission under state law of Michigan does. So there's ideas that would be good to just kind of cross-pollinate, and in that sense, making sure these ideas get disseminated just can only help, and for a relatively low cost.
Yeah, that's really great. Thank you, Commissioner Leash. And by chance, are those magazines, are those available online? Does Jacob know?
They're not available online, Mayor. We get a certain number of them based on our membership, but we can look into what the additional cost would be to get additional copies of them and see what we can do about getting those to the planning or to the city commission. So we'll look into that. I made a note of it because it's a great suggestion.
Yeah. Matt, is your hand up again?
Nah, I usually don't use Zoom, so I just have to learn to actually take the hand down.
Sure, no problem.
Mr. Mayor, we're getting.
Well, I think we're at about.
I was going to say the same thing you're saying, I think.
I'm sorry, Jacob.
Go ahead, Mr. Mayor. You were about to say the same thing.
Yeah, we're about. That's right. So we're about 10 minutes to 7, and so it kind of seems like we've kind of come to our conclusion of our time. I appreciated this meeting, and I look forward to maybe continuing some of these conversations at the city commission level, but also with the planning commission members. And so, does staff have any concluding comments or?
I don't have anything further. Do you, Jacob?
No, just a reminder to the planning commission that you'll follow a different link to get to our regular meeting once we close this one.
Okay. At this time, since this is a public meeting, I will open public comment. And it looks like we have 2 staff members with us in the attendees. I don't see their hands up, so I will close public comment at this time. And at 6:49, I will adjourn this joint meeting of the City Commission and the Planning Commission. Thank you, everybody, and have a good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.